Hi, I am Dr. R.K.S. Mangesh, President for Center for Human Development and Neuro-Linguistic Research. In this video, I am talking to you about the concept known as NLP communication model. This is very interesting, and when you learn this model, you will find that you have got authority in the field of NLP. You can actually become very popular, and as well as you can achieve whatever you want to achieve, because everything is working in our mind with this NLP communication model. This aspect of NLP communication model, it says that it's a very basic model that talks about every moment we are being presented with more than 2.3 millions of information, and which is called as 2.3 million bits per second. And you know what? Our brain is wired, or the conscious part of the brain is wired to receive about 134 bytes per second. As you know it, we receive information through our sensors or the sensory receptors, which are 5 types of sensory receptors we have got. One is called as visual, second is auditory, third is kinesthetic, then olfactory and gustatory. It's not a sequence. These are the 5 sensory receptors that helps us to receive information. When you receive information through the sensory receptors, as it gets into our head or internal representation system, so this takes in at a rate of 134 bytes per second, which is easy to understand because it is being found out in a research by George Miller, who was a professor in the Department of Psychology of Harvard University in 1956. He found out that mind receives information or makes a meaning out of the information in chunks than in bytes per second. So when it takes about the chunks, so the rule is the brain understands this 134 in a chunk of 7 plus minus 2. That's you might have seen. When you want to remember anything, if you listen more than 7 chunks or maybe more than 9 chunks at a go, you may not recall everything, or you may not memorize everything. Suppose there is a telephone number and the number has got 10 digits. If somebody tells you all the 10 digits together, maybe you may not recall. But if you break it into 7 plus minus 2, that means 5 to 9 chunks, and then you can remember. That's why when you create a PowerPoint presentation, we do not keep more than 9 rows at one go. Or maybe when you are writing something, we do not write more than 9 words at one go without any punctuation. Similarly, when we communicate, we do not talk more than 5 to 9 words at one go without any punctuation or intonation. Therefore, this rule or this formula till now is that we are presented with, every moment we are presented with more than 2.3 millions of data. A brain takes 137, which is known as 7 plus minus 2, George Miller's number. So, and it is being taken through the sensory receptors. So what happens? Why this number is reduced so little? Because when the brain receives information through the sensory receptors, there is a mechanism that happens in the brain. That process is known as delete, distort and generalization. So what the brain does, when brain receives information, the information which for that moment appears not significant for the brain or the conscious part of the brain, it actually deletes that information. Then whatever data is being captured, this is being matched with the data which is similar to the previous experience. So this part is called distortion. And after distortion, it actually doesn't get into specifics. It actually generalizes it. It names it, it generalizes it. That's why it is called as generalization. So the 3 things happens. Generalization means it puts into a category. So the 3 things that happens inside the brain are called as delete, distort, generalization. And interestingly, this mechanism of delete, distort and generalization, it is quite specific to individuals. So individual to individual this varies, because the filters that causes this delete, distort, generalization in a unique way for unique individuals are many. Out of those, the 7 major filters that mostly we study in neuro-linguistic programming are memory. So the kind of memory you are carrying, depending on that, the data will be deleted, distorted generalization. Language, the kind of language you know. Suppose certain language you do not know and the data is giving the other language, maybe it will delete that information, or it may create certain distortion depending on the similarity of the phonetics of certain words that is being spoken. Then we say, the meta programs. Meta programs are the programs that actually works below or beyond the level of our awareness. So immediately we do not recognize that, and there is a pattern, that we can understand the meta programs. And then it is called as, the values and beliefs of ours. So depending on the values and beliefs of ours, we receive information, we delete information, we distort information, we generalize information. Then we say our attitudes. Depending on attitudes, we do that. And then the decisions we have taken about life. And another one is called as STEM. That means the space, time, energy, and matter where we are in. That's it, the 7 filters that causes, or we study the 7 filters out of many that contributes to this mechanism of delete, distortion, generalization are memory, language, meta programs, values, beliefs, attitudes, decisions, and STEM. That means space, time, energy, and matter. So till now we discussed that more than 2.3 millions of information that comes in, brain deletes, distorts, generalizes because of the filters, and the pronounced filters are memory, language, meta program, values, beliefs, attitudes, decisions, and space, time, energy, and matter. So after getting deleted, distorted, generalizes, when it gets into your head, so it is being stored in your representation system, and the data that makes a meaningful information is about 137, which can be represented by Judge-Miller's number, which is called as 7 plus minus 2. So once this data is there, it is represented in your head, it is being represented in your head, and that is known as internal representation system of yours. So the internal representation system takes, or the data which is being taken through the sensory receptors is stored in the internal representation system in a code, and that code is the coding of the 5 senses, which is called as VACOG. That means visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. Olfactory is smell, gustatory is taste, kinesthetic is touch, feeling, action, and auditory is what you listen, the tone of the voice, and visual is what you see. Therefore, if I ask you to think about your favorite holiday destination, and once you start thinking, you will find maybe you will see an image, a picture, or maybe some visuals. You might also see people talking, you might also hear certain sounds. You might also feel something about it, you might experience something about it, and you might also, your brain might recognize certain smells, or maybe the taste of the food, if at all you are having, or anything like that. So that's why what happens, everything is being coded in your brain in a coding which is called as the coding of VACOG. And those coding can also be named with another aspect, or can be labeled with another aspect, which is called auditory digital. We will learn about auditory digital little later. So now what happens, the internal representation, the data which is being stored and fixed in the internal representation system, that actually gives you a state, which can be a feeling, and that feeling and state gives you a physiology. That's why your internal representation, your state of feeling, and the physiology, these are aligned, and this together gives you a behavior or the action you take. So the beauty with NLP communication model says that if somebody says, I am not getting my results, that means the actions are not right, appropriate, then we know that since the action is being, pre-stimulated by maybe the combination of the internal representation, the state, and the physiology, that's why by changing any of these or some of these, what we can do, we can make the person to change the complete set of actions. And the beauty is that the person can actually start getting results. That is why we call NLP is known as the study of excellence in whatever you do. And how can you do that? How can you change the coding of a particular thing? You can work on the filters. And when you work on the filters, like suppose the person has a memory which is not helping him to recognize a better improved data. So we can work on the memory, and we have mechanism in NLP. Suppose the person has taken a decision and the person is rigid. What we can make the person flexible. We can change the decision. The values, the beliefs, everything in NLP can be changed. And depending on the change, the internal representation will change. As the internal representation, the main coding that gives you the behavior that changes, your life starts changing and you start getting the best of the results that you have decided. That's why the human communication model says that, in a nutshell, if I summarize that, every moment we are being presented with more than 2.3 millions of information, and your brain takes 137, which is represented in 7 plus minus 2 formula given by George Miller. This is represented in your internal representation, which is being modeled through, or which is being actually processed through delete, distort and generalization. And this delete, distort, generalization, that processing happens because of the filters. There are many filters out of that. The 7 important filters are memory, language, metaprograms, values, beliefs, attitudes, decisions, and your space, time, energy, and matter. And then this representation is being coded in a coding of 5 senses, which is called VACOG: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory. And then this can be labeled with something called auditory digital. We will learn about it later. And this representation gives us a state, that gives us a physiology, that directs us towards taking action or behavior. So learning this will always help you out. So thank you very much for watching this video.